Hey, greetings everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, gubernatorial candidate for the Republican nomination here in the great state of Texas. You know, there's a lot of interrelationships going on out there with some of the things we see happening in our government. But one of the most important ones is that education and the relationship to property taxes and the relationship therefore to renewables. It's very interesting how all these things come together here in the state of Texas. One of the key things that I want to discuss and wanted to support is school choice. Why do I think school choice is so important to support here in the state of Texas? Because I'm a product of school choice. My parents, I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. There were two public schools that they could have sent me to. It was C.W. Hill and John Pope. But they made the decision to send me to Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic School, a small black Catholic parish school that was right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. Because the most important thing about education, not indoctrination, but education has to provide for our kids the equality of opportunity. Now, why do I say equality of opportunity? Because if every child has the ability to get a good quality education, they can be all that you can be. And that's one of the mottos that the United States Army had back when I came in. And that's why that's so important, equality of opportunity. Because it says no matter where you're born, no matter where you come from, in these United States of America, and here in the state of Texas, you can grow up to become anything that you want as long as you have the drive and desire. But it starts with a good quality education. But unfortunately, what the progressive socialist left believes in is something completely different. They would rather see an equality of outcomes. And what does that mean? That means that somebody else determines what you can be, where you can go, what you can become. And that's why we have to defeat this dangerous thing called either the Cultural Competency Action Plan. Well, let's just call it what it is, CCAP. That's what they faced in South Lake, Texas. They did a great job of defeating it. And then also you have the CRT, the critical race theory. But the bottom line is what the left believes in with their equality of outcomes is just cultural Marxism. I found it very interesting that the head of the teachers union in the United States of America, Randy Weingarten, said that they would go after parents. They would use all of their abilities to defeat parents because they wanted to teach critical race theory in grades K through 12. That's why we've got to have and support the school choice. You know, there are many things out there that our young people should have the ability to take part in. But unfortunately, when we talk about school choice, what we really ought to focus that on is a lot of our inner city communities where we have young kids, boys and girls, that are relegated to failed public schools. I think we need to give them the opportunity. And I think that the money should follow the child. And talking about the money in education, you know, over here with the property taxes, you know, there's about 55 to 60% at the state level. The property taxes goes towards what? It goes towards the maintenance and operations fund for our independent school districts. Now, think about this. What if we looked at all of the budget surpluses that we have here in the state of Texas, every budgeting cycle? Right now, we say that's about $7 billion. But if we decided by legislation that let's go with, I don't know, 80% of the budget surplus that's supposed to go toward the paying down of the maintenance, 80% of the budget surplus can go down to the payment of these maintenance and operations funds. Because then that reduces the property tax burden that we have here on you, the citizen. And therefore, if we can reduce the property tax burden that we have here on the citizen, if we can focus education on being education, not indoctrination, if we can therefore get to us having school choice, which means we can have equality of opportunity and not equality of outcomes, think of how much better that is for the great state of Texas. And another thing that we have to do as far as education, when we look at taxes, I think it's important that our taxes not go to colleges and universities that are promoting Marxist ideology. You know, you heard about this toxic masculinity programs and things of that nature. Why are we funding stuff like that? And so what I think that we should do is make sure that our colleges and universities, if they want to get state funding, your taxpayer dollars, they should be teaching our kids and our colleges and universities how they can be productive members of our society, and they can help to grow the economy of Texas, not become the next generation of little radicals. And the other thing over here, when we talk about our equality of opportunity, instead of the equality of outcomes that we see here, this is where we start talking about our science, technology, engineering, and math, because when you look at the economy of Texas, how it's growing, our oil and gas industry, the tech industry, the medical industry, our economy, that's what we should be focusing on, and that's what we should be preparing our kids to do. I don't really care for this whole thing, teaching a kid how to take a test, because that's not really teaching them. That's creating rote memorization. That's creating the next generation of robots. We want critical thinkers here in the state of Texas. But then how does education, we talk about how it relates to the property taxes with the maintenance and operation fund that goes to the ISDs. If we had 80% of those property taxes, the budget surplus that we have, go toward this, then that pays down what you have to put in as far as your part of this, and that alleviates it, and so therefore there's money going back into your pocket. But what is this relationship with the renewables? It's called Section 313. And in Section 313, we are actually funneling money through our independent school districts that go to these renewable sources, the wind and solar, by way of subsidies. Now, in this last legislative session, what we did was we didn't fully repeal this, we just didn't renew it. And there's a big difference between not renewing as opposed to repealing. See, what we want everyone to do is to participate on a fair market-based economy. So if wind and solar wants to compete here in the state of Texas, they should not be getting subsidies that are funneled to them by way of Section 13 with our independent school districts. They should be able to compete just like everyone else. But that's not the case. It's a lot of money that is flowing to these companies. And as we remember in the last February, it was wind and solar because we were giving them a 23% distribution of our energy here, and they failed us. So without a doubt, we got to look at our system of education here. And we got to make sure that our system of education focuses on school choice, equality of opportunity, and building the next generation of critical thinkers here for the state of Texas. And then as well as education relates to our property taxes, like we said, 55 to 60% of our property taxes at the state level, not talking about the local level, goes to the maintenance and operations fund for our independent school districts. Let's look at the budget surpluses that we have here. And let's put in the legislation, let's say 80% of those budget surpluses goes to paying down that maintenance and operations fund, which means that you get more money into your pocket, which means that you can make sure that your child has better education opportunities. But then also we need to make sure that these colleges and universities that are out there, we're not funding the next generation of little progressive socialists like you see down in Austin with the Red Guards, Austin. Many of them are students at the University of Texas. We don't want to raise up a generation that hates our country, hates this state, and wants to see it undermined. But then also, we got to understand that relationship of education to these renewable sources, the wind and the solar, Section 313, because we're funneling money through our independent school districts to wind and solar subsidies, and then we backfill that money to the independent school districts. We got to clean up our house. And one of the important things I want you to remember as we close out, Texas has about a $107 billion debt. Now you say, I thought we had budget surplus. When you are using accounting gimmicks that don't take into account your unfunded liabilities, that's the problem. What do I mean by unfunded liabilities? Your pension plans, your health plans. Exact same thing that you see up in Washington, D.C. The actual debt for the United States of America is probably not that $30 trillion. It's probably closer to like 110 or 120 because we're not taking into account the Social Security, the Medicare, or the net interest of the debt. The exact same thing here. We got a lot of things to work on here in the state of Texas. We got to fix our education. We got to fix the property tax situation. And we got to make sure that we stop subsidizing these renewables that did not own up and produce the amount of energy that they needed to. Learn more about this at west4texas.com. That's west4texas.com. God bless.